Stories making headlines this hour, we take a close look at the UN panel's unprecedented 10-day Seoul mission, hearing testimony about 50 North Korean defectors and victims of prison camps on human rights abuses in the world's most isolated country. China sends its top nuclear envoy to Pyongyang for the first time in 3 years. Amid high hopes his visit will lead to the resumption of the multilateral dialogue aimed at denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. Plus, the United States condemns the Syrian government for last week's use of poisonous gas against its citizens, calling the chemical attacks a moral obscenity. But details of any action plan have yet to be finalized. Well, these stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Tuesday, August 27th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with Seoul's most recent conciliatory moves towards Pyongyang. South Korea has proposed working-level talks on reviving an inter-Korean tourism project at the North's Mount Kumgang.
The offer follows an inter-Korean agreement to reopen the shuttered Kaesong Industrial Complex and another deal to hold reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
The South Korean government has offered October 2nd as the date to hold working-level talks with North Korea over the reopening of the Mount Kumgang resort to South Korean tourists. South Korea's Unification Ministry sent a statement to the North on Tuesday afternoon through its communication channel at Panmunjom. North Korea has not yet responded to the counteroffer. Unification Ministry officials cited technical reasons for the proposed date in early October, which comes 1 week after the date initially proposed by the South.
We have two agreements to deal with at the moment: the reunions of separated families and the resumption of operations at the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex.
South Korean officials say they are still carrying out measures that were agreed upon during working-level talks over family reunions and want to deal with one issue at a time. They also pointed out that preparations for a resumption of operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex are also underway. Seoul has arranged for a group of inspectors to head to Mount Kumgang for 2 days starting Wednesday, where the family reunions are to take place late next month. The South Korean government regards the reopening of the Mount Kumgang tour issue as being separate from the reunions of the separated families, while Pyongyang has tried to lump them together. North Korea asked for working-level talks for Mount Kumgang tours to be held later this month or in early September. South Korean tours to the Mount Kumgang resort were suspended in 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
China's top nuclear envoy, Woo Da-wei, may be putting the pressure on North Korea to resume nuclear talks during his visit to Pyongyang this week.
While details about the purpose of the trip have not yet been released, experts speculate a visit would not be without purpose or incentives for the communist regime to engage in international dialogue. Our Han Da-eun has more on Beijing's visit.
Amid easing tensions on the Korean peninsula against the backdrop of a series of inter-Korean dialogue, China's top nuclear envoy, Woo Da-wei, has landed in Pyongyang to hold talks with his North Korean counterparts. Although the purpose of the visit is not yet known, many experts see it as part of Beijing's efforts to re-engage North Korea in dialogue with other regional powers in order to further enhance stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Woo is widely expected to hold talks with the North's first vice foreign minister and the point man on nuclear issues, Kim Gae-kwan, and one of the vice ministers, Lee Yong-ho. Diplomatic sources in Beijing say that China would not make empty visits at a time like this, and it's highly likely that the North may offer its communist ally some sort of a surprise gift. A gift Beijing could use as leverage to pressure Seoul and Washington into resuming dialogue with the North on its pending nuclear issue. And as his visit comes before marking the 10th year since the stalled six-party nuclear talks began, experts also say that reopening of the multilateral talks could be on the table.
The need for resumption of the six-party talks already seems to have been discussed between the two sides when Vice President of the People's Republic of China, Li Yuanchao, visited Pyongyang in July. I believe the details of the talks will likely be addressed this time.
However, some experts point out it won't be easy for China to bring the North and other regional powers, especially the U.S. and Japan, together, as the two nations firmly assert that North Korea should first show promising behavior before nuclear talks can resume. Meanwhile, U.S. point man on North Korea policy Glyn Davies and Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Russell will embark on an Asia trip to South Korea, China, and Japan early next month. 한다은, Arirang News.
South Korean Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin is scheduled to visit Brunei on Wednesday to attend the second ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus.
During his two-day visit, Kim is expected to discuss cooperative measures to counter security threats on the Korean peninsula with defense ministers from the ASEAN region. On the sidelines, Kim is also likely to hold a one-on-one with U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and exchange views on the timeline for a transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. Amid continued nuclear and missile threats from the north, South Korea has suggested postponing the OPCON transfer set for 2015, but the U.S. has yet to give an official response.
Turning now to an unprecedented UN investigation into human rights abuses in North Korea. The UN's Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights wrapped up their 10-day stay in Seoul on this Tuesday.
Before moving on to Japan, their next destination, the three-panel briefed reporters on their findings through their collection of testimonies from North Korean defectors in Seoul. For more, we are joined by Hwang Sung-hee in the studio. Sung-hee, welcome.
Hi, guys.
So walk us through how exactly the investigation was carried out by UN panel.
Well, the United Nations Commission of Inquiry has been in Seoul since August 18th, and since then, the three members of the commission held public hearings to collect testimonies from those who witnessed North Korea's violation of human rights firsthand. Now, during the 5-day hearing, the team met with around 50 North Korean defectors. Now, this is the first day of the hearing, where Shin Dong-hyuk, a well-known North Korean defector turned human rights activist, offered his account of the North's crimes against humanity.
What do you say was actually happening at that time?
At political prisons, there are public executions twice every year.
Well, the commission said that through the hearings, they were able to gather evidence of violations of human rights by North Korea, like the existence of prison camps where detainees are treated inhumanely. For instance, here prisoners are often required to live on rats, mice, and grasshoppers and are under constant torture.
So the commission was here for 10 days, quite a long time. Did they find any new allegations of human rights abuses in North Korea?
They did. The commission said that they were able to get better insights into some of the new matters, which includes trafficking, forced abortions, and other indignities against women who are caught while trying to escape from the regime. However, the UN panel said that no final conclusion can be drawn up yet, as their investigation is not complete. The panel will begin another round of investigation in Japan, mostly collecting accounts on Japanese abductees to North Korea. Now, once they wrap things up, the commission will submit a final report to the UN in March next year.
But North Korea hasn't allowed the commission to enter the regime for an on-site investigation. So how reliable are these sources and testimonies?
Well, that's the problem. The commission has asked the North Korean government numerous times to enter North Korea for the investigation. However, North Korea has denied any human rights abuses and has said that UN inspectors will not be allowed on North Korean soil. However, during the press conference today, Michael Kirby, the chief commissioner of the UN panel, said that his commission will continue to reach out to the North for access to their country and promised to work with no preconceptions. Take a look.
And the best way for North Korea to respond to the type of evidence which, if left unanswered, is believable, even in some matters compelling, is for it to open its doors, give access.
Well, the North state-run Korean Central News Agency denounced the investigation today, calling it a scheme to break up the current momentum in dialogue between the two Koreas.
On the other hand, are there any signs that there have been improvements in human rights conditions in North Korea?
Well, Sean, human rights in North Korea was an issue that the international community has been keeping a close eye on. U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues Robert King recently paid a visit to Seoul and expressed hope.
We'd like to see progress on human rights. We've focused on those issues, and we'd like to see the North make progress in those areas.
And some say that North Korea is showing efforts to make improvements in humanitarian issues. President Peter Maurer of the International Committee of the Red Cross, who visited North Korea last week, said that North Korea was enthusiastic about resolving humanitarian issues like the resumption of family reunions. Also, a report released today by a U.S.-based NGO group, Human Rights in North Korea, said that North Korea has apparently closed down 2 out of 6 prison camps. The report said the prisoners at these camps have mostly been freed, setting a good precedent, but added that still some 130,000 political prisoners are being tortured in the North Korea's 4 remaining prison camps.
All right, Sung-Yi, thank you very much for that report today.
My pleasure.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise. Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on to maneuver, trying to cover up the South's true intentions. The stern wording to Syria by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. He has accused the Assad regime of using chemical weapons on its civilians and warned that the White House is weighing all options carefully over a response to their heinous actions.
So how close is the United States to using military actions in Syria? Our Ojinju reports on possible international responses to the ongoing violence.
The United States has strongly condemned Syria for its use of chemical weapons, calling it, quote, undeniable and inexcusable.
Let me be clear. The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders by chemical weapons is a moral obscenity.
In a press briefing Monday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry indicated there will be an international response to what's happening in Syria in the coming days.
President Obama believes there must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapons against the world's most vulnerable people. Nothing today is more serious, and nothing is receiving more serious scrutiny.
With Kerry's remarks, it now seems more likely Western powers, including the U.S., Britain, and France, are edging toward a military strike against Syria. They're known to have agreed to cooperate in a military action even without the backing of the UN and attack major Syrian facilities using cruise missiles fired from Navy warships. The London-based Financial Times quoted an unnamed senior Western official as saying the 3 countries are eyeing a series of one-off strikes on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's military assets to send a clear message that the international community would not tolerate the use of chemical weapons in modern warfare. However, the official added that these nations are not planning to intervene in the Syrian civil war. On the other side, countries like Iran and Russia, allies of the Syrian government, warned that a military attack would be a terrible mistake.
If anybody thinks that bombing and destroying the Syrian military infrastructure and leaving the battlefield for the opponents of the regime to win would end everything, that is an illusion.
The Russian foreign minister also made it clear that the use of force without UN Security Council approval would be a grave violation of international law. Oh Jin-soo, Arirang News.
And taking it now to Japan, where concerns are rising about the contaminated water leaking from the country's crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant. While many worry that the leak could have long-lasting effects, Tokyo is reaching out to foreign experts for help. As Song Ji-san reports on Japan's nuclear fallout.
TEPCO, the operator of the stricken Fukushima nuclear plant, is seeking help from foreign decommissioning experts on how to deal with highly radioactive water leaking from the site. This, as the Japanese government is pushing for greater involvement in the cleanup after TEPCO acknowledged last week that hundreds of tons of contaminated water had oozed out of the storage tanks that were assembled after the 2011 nuclear meltdowns at the site. Visiting the plant Monday, Japan's Trade and Industry Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said he would use money from a multi-billion-dollar emergency reserve fund to set up a task force that will take over the cleanup efforts and oversee operation. With Japan's foreign minister recently visiting Chernobyl to apply lessons learned from there to Fukushima, Russia has repeated its offer to help Tokyo, saying the cooling and decommissioning of the station will have to include technologies developed outside of Japan if the cleanup is to succeed. China is also closely following developments at Fukushima. China has maintained that it may want to conduct checks in waters near the facility and assess the impact of the nuclear accident on the Western Pacific. Song Jae-sun, Arirang News.
Now, meanwhile, Tokyo did respond on Tuesday to an earlier request from Seoul for more information on the scope of the contaminated water. South Korea's foreign ministry said that Tokyo said it will first provide information that is currently available, but added that it's a complicated matter since the details Seoul is requesting for are mostly technical issues. Now, Seoul had asked Tokyo 2 weeks earlier to share information about the intensity of the radiation leak and the effect it could have on the ocean's ecosystem. Staying in Japan, the government there is growing more vocal about its intent to improve ties with neighboring countries, including Korea and China. The Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said on Monday that he wanted to hold summit talks with Korean President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The latest proposal comes a week after the Japanese foreign minister suggested to the Korean ambassador in Tokyo that President Park and Prime Minister Abe meet next month on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Russia. Officials in Seoul said any talks at most would be informal and brief. China is not keen to hold a summit with Japan either. In response to Abe's request, Chinese Deputy Foreign Minister Li Baodong said Japan's request for high-level talks was not genuine and that Tokyo should first stop with empty talks.
Over in Los Angeles, tens of thousands of Hallyu or Korean Wave fans gathered for a festival of music, food, and fashion. And as our Kim Min-ji reports, some visitors were also able to meet the love of their lives.
Dancers show off their sleek moves, some performing in outfits almost identical to those of actual K-pop stars. Others have made banners in Korean. We're at KCON, the largest Hallyu event ever to be held overseas, that opened in Los Angeles last weekend. The two-day event drew more than 20,000 fans and spectators, all of whom were looking for a special experience.
Flew here all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're waiting here for Teen Top, the fan meeting. We're really excited about it.
The fans scream with joy as they finally get a chance to see their beloved K-pop heroes up close and in person. The Hallyu stars wave back and enthusiastically greet their fans. Some 75 Korean companies, including food and automobile industries, also took part in the event to promote Korea. With various interesting programs throughout the event, the fans were completely mesmerized by the wonders of Hallyu, along with its addictive music, dance, and food.
So it's called bimbap. That's how you say it. I got the fried rice version, so it's spicier, but it's really delicious.
The festival came to an end on Sunday with spectacular performances by K-pop stars G-Dragon, Crayon Pop, and EXO. KCON is scheduled to take place in Japan, China, and other Southeast Asian countries next year as part of Korea's efforts to further promote and spread the Hallyu boom across the globe. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Back here on the nation's culture front, the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, one of the oldest and most renowned orchestras in Korea, is preparing to record and release its 7th album during a concert that will be held later this week. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won takes us behind the scenes of the rehearsals.
Dozens of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra members are busy rehearsing for a 2-day concert that will go on stage later this week. Korea's leading orchestra and maestro Jang Myung-hoon will present Mahler's Symphony No. 9 at the concert. This concert will also be recorded live and released as the orchestra's 7th album through the most prestigious classical music label, Deutsche Grammophon. The orchestra signed a contract with Deutsche Grammophon in 2011 to release 10 albums over 5 years, making it the first time that an Asian orchestra has signed such an extensive contract.
Among the things that the orchestra has achieved so far, this recording contract and the records that we have made are perhaps the biggest accomplishment. Not only Asian orchestra, today there are not many orchestras in the world that do these kind of recordings, and so I'm very proud of them.
The orchestra has developed greatly over the past 80 years, with maestro Jang Myung-hoon taking the lead.
To be able to record for Deutsche Grammophon this main stream repertoire, such as Beethoven 5th Symphony, 9th Symphony, Mahler 1st Symphony, 2nd Symphony, and now Mahler 9th Symphony. There is virtually no orchestra in the world that does that today. And so that is a testament to the great development.
The concert will be held on this Thursday and Friday evening at the Seoul Arts Center. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The lineup for the Korean national football team's 2 friendly matches early next month are set.
And Stephen Che is here to tell us who made the cut. Stephen.
Hey guys, manager Hong Myung-bo released the lineups for 2 upcoming matches against Haiti and Croatia, and this time he's included players from Europe. Hong selected 7 European League players to inject some potency into his offense as well as to shore up the back line. The most surprising yet well-received pick had to be Lee Chung-yong, who hasn't seen international play since 2011. He'll play the midfield with Son Heung-min and Kim Bo-kyung. Meanwhile, Koo Ja-chul and Ji Dong-won have been placed on the attack, while Park Ju-ho and Yoon Seok-young will bolster the last line of defense and run the wing. And moving on to Japanese baseball, the NPB's Oryx Buffaloes want their star slugger Lee Dae-ho to stay on board next season and possibly even after retirement. An Oryx official said that the Buffaloes would hold on to the prolific hitter when his 2-year, nearly $10 million contract is up this season, depending on salary negotiations. The official went on to say that he has adjusted well to the team and hinted that he could transition after his playing career into a coaching position. And stepping up to the plate, it's time to check out Tuesday's top KBO matchup. The Nexen Heroes and the LG Twins clashed at Jamsil Stadium. The weather's cooling down, but both teams are trying to heat up. It's the top of the first. Park Byung-ho hits with a runner from second in, 1-0 Heroes. Both pitchers throwing well, and now it's the fourth. Nexen's Kim Min-sung tries to steal home, gets caught by the pitcher. He's tagged out, scores stay the same. And now it's the bottom of the inning. LG's pressing. First baseman Lee Byung-gyu hits to short. Great diving catch out at second. It's thrown away, but Knight pitches out of the jam. And Nexen holds on to win this one with a final score of 1-0. And looking at the scores from around the league, we have SK defeating Hanwha 3-0, Samsung over NC 2-1, and Lotte defeating Kia 7-2. That does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
Time to go over to our Kelly Park over at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Sean and Chie. You know, temperatures are still pretty hot in the afternoon these days, but the cooler mornings and nights are cooling things back down to the mid-20s, which is making things pretty bearable.
Yes, indeed. Like Kelly, I hear that all the heat wave advisories have finally been lifted across the nation.
You know, that's correct. 72 days, that is, after they were first issued. And this record-setting heat wave has been in place in total of 19 days in Seoul and 49 days in Daegu, which is just about half of the season of summer. But this doesn't mean that summer is completely over just yet. We still have another hot and mainly sunny day in forecast across the nation tomorrow, with just a few clouds rolling in across the nation. Now, there are some chances of some scattered showers in the east coastal locations, as easterly winds will be blowing in the area. And with that, our daily highs will be similar to today's, hovering around the upper 20s to the mid-30s. Now, this will all drop in the reaction of a rainy weather on Thursday, so please keep that in mind. And for more details, let's go over to our numbers. Now, as you can see, Seoul will reach up to a high of 31 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Gwangju will both hit a high of 32, and Busan a few degrees lower at 30 degrees. Now, other regions starting from Daejeon will also hit a high of 32, and Mount Kumgang will be a few degrees lower at 23. And that's all for this hour. I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
And that's a broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.